The room was already filled with experienced martial artists when Bruce Lee stepped forward at the Long Beach International Karate Championships. He wasn't the biggest man there, he wasn't wearing a championship belt, and for many people in the audience, he wasn't yet the global icon they would later know. But within moments, the atmosphere around him began to change. Bruce wasn't simply demonstrating techniques, he was showing an entirely different way of thinking about movement, timing, and martial arts. And the people watching were about to see why this relatively young martial artist was attracting so much attention. The Long Beach tournament had been organized by Ed Parker, one of the major figures in American karate. Bruce had first appeared at Parker's tournament in 1964, and that demonstration would unexpectedly help change the direction of his life. A spectator, celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring, told television producer William Dozier about Bruce's performance, helping lead to Bruce's screen test and eventually his role as Kato in the Green Hornet. But Bruce's relationship with Long Beach didn't end there. By the time he appeared again in the late 1960s, martial arts audiences were beginning to recognize that Bruce Lee was doing something unusual. He wasn't interested in simply proving that one traditional style was better than another. He wanted to test what actually worked. That idea would eventually become central to Jeet Kune Do. The martial art Bruce developed around principles of simplicity, directness, and freedom. And then came the demonstrations. Bruce moved with an economy that made his actions look almost effortless. There was no wasted motion, no dramatic pause designed simply for appearance. His movements were fast, controlled, and precise. One of the demonstrations associated with Bruce's Long Beach appearances was the famous 1-inch punch, a technique that became one of the most recognizable examples of his explosive power and body mechanics. But the punch itself wasn't really the point. What mattered was what it revealed. Bruce was demonstrating that power did not always require a huge swing, distance did not automatically determine impact, and speed was not simply about moving quickly, it was about understanding timing. The audience could see the difference between someone performing a technique and someone investigating why the technique worked. That was Bruce's real obsession. He was constantly questioning assumptions. He had begun studying Wing Chun under Yip Man in Hong Kong, but as his own experience grew, he became increasingly willing to examine, modify, and discard anything he considered unnecessary. That attitude made Bruce Lee unusual. He wasn't asking people to copy him forever. He wanted martial artists to discover what was effective for themselves. And that philosophy became visible whenever Bruce demonstrated. The more people watched, the harder it became to dismiss him as simply an actor who knew martial arts. At the time, his Hollywood career was developing rapidly. He had already become known as Kato on the Green Hornet, but his martial arts reputation existed independently of the screen. Long Beach gave audiences a chance to see the difference. On television, Bruce could be choreographed. On a stage surrounded by experienced martial artists, his physical ability had to speak for itself. And it did. The remarkable part wasn't that Bruce Lee looked invincible, it was that he looked intensely aware. Every movement had a purpose. Every demonstration reflected the same question he kept returning to throughout his life. What works when you remove everything unnecessary? That question would eventually influence generations of martial artists, athletes, actors, and students far beyond the world of karate. Years later, people would remember Bruce Lee for his movies, his speed, his physique, and his legendary screen presence. But moments like Long Beach reveal something deeper. Before Bruce Lee became a worldwide symbol, he was a young martial artist standing in front of an audience and asking them to look at martial arts differently. He didn't need to be the largest person in the room. He didn't need the loudest voice. He simply had to move. And when he did, people began to understand that they weren't watching someone who had merely mastered a martial art. They were watching someone trying to redefine what martial art itself could become.